Hot Shop. My name is Douglas Taylor. This is Paulie Maybell. Paulie's going to make a piece of blown glass here for you. We started out by going into our furnace. Inside of our furnace is a large crucible that holds around 350 pounds of molten clear glass at over 2200 degrees at all times. So as he takes that pipe and plunges into the mix, he can gather up on the end of the pipe a bit of glass. Now he just took a first gather, which is as much as we can pick up of the first time through. And by allowing that to cool slightly, he's now gone in for his second gather. The second gather is exponentially bigger. And so that's how we make our pieces larger, by multiple gathers. So if you ever see a great big large piece of glass, it started out with that single gather, just as we did. It's just made by continuously gathering on top. Now he's taken that clear glass over and started adding color. And the color he's using is called frit. And frit is highly concentrated colored glass. It's been imbued with different metal oxides in order to create the colors, such as copper and cobalt, gold, silver, iron, and so on. These heavy metals are put into a clear base, then refined from very fine powders to very large chunks, and that way as we roll that clear glass through them, they'll adhere to the surface. We'll take them over to our glory hole, which is our reheating furnace. It's running around 2500 degrees, and quickly melt those in. And that'll become one unified piece of glass. Now with color. Now he's going to make multiple passes through this color in order to build up the density, because as he begins to blow this piece out, those platelets of color are going to stretch. And as they stretch, they thin. And by building up a couple layers, we'll have a nice rich density of color as he finishes his piece. Now we use the glory hole to keep the glass up to temperature in a molten state. As we work the glass, it starts to cool. As it cools, it hardens and becomes unworkable. So we keep going back and heating it back up. That steel top table that he's working on is called a marver table. Gets its name from the Italian word for marble, which is what the Italians would have used a few hundred years ago. A large slab of marble. Nowadays we all use steel. It's much more affordable, durable, and definitely more portable than a 5-inch slab of marble. But it allows us the same working surface to shape and cool the glass as we're creating our pieces. Now as he heats this up, he's going to drop into an optic mold, which is an aluminum cast mold, and that'll impart these louvers on the surface. And what he's using this mold for right now is to manipulate its color. By pushing it into that mold, it's pushed the color into the clear and also stretched the color in areas. Now what that's going to do is, as he folds these louvers over on top of themselves, it'll trap a double concentration of color in the valleys. And as he begins to blow this piece out, you'll notice a distinct line pattern, spiral line pattern of double concentrated color. We use the molds for all kinds of different purposes, for texture and shape, also color manipulation. It's going to continue to heat and smooth out these louvers on the surface. He just wanted to manipulate his color. Now that he's done that, it's going to smooth that surface back out so it's nice and even. He doesn't want any of those ridges left in there, because he's going to put more glass on top of it. If you put more glass on top of it with those ridges, anywhere there's an indentation on the surface can trap air, causing bubbles. Now we can intentionally do that by using this technique, but in this case he doesn't necessarily want that. Now bubbles are an inherent part of glass making. Unless you take weeks to refine your glass, there's going to be a bubble in there someplace. So it's not necessarily a flaw. Now that he has that heated up, It's going to use a wooden block. These are cherry wood blocks saturated in water. We use fruit woods because they have less pitch or sap. And as we soak those wooden blocks in water, they become saturated and allows us a tool to shape the glass without marring the surface of the piece. As these come into close proximity of that 2,000-degree glass, they steam off. And with that high-pressure steam, it'll lift the glass up off the surface of the wood, allowing us to shape, but never coming into direct contact with the wood fibers. As long as these wooden blocks are kept wet, they never actually touch the glass. Now that he has that symmetrically placed on the end of the pipe, he's pushed that heat all the way back down to the center. And as he rolls across the table, he's going to cool the front side of the glass into this cone. Now this cone is going to ensure that as he begins to push a direct pressure up against the back side of that glass, the bubble he's about to create doesn't blow straight out the end. By selectively cooling the surface, he can direct where the bubble is going to blow in the path of least resistance, which will be widthwise. Now he has about a racquetball-sized bubble in there, and that'll grow to be the interior of his vessel. Now he has that started. He's going to go ahead and heat that up once again and distribute that bubble evenly throughout that mass. This is all part of this setup. Setting up his color, setting up his design, starting his bubble. And once he has the setup complete, he's going to be putting the encasement gather on. The encasement gather is going to double the amount of glass that he has to work with. And it's also going to act as a lens to magnify those colors that he's applied. Now as he rolls evenly back and forth across the table, he has to support the weight of the glass. Otherwise, the glass is soft enough that if he were to pause or remove his front hand from that piece, it would pancake where it's at. They have a very delicate, even touch as we roll evenly back and forth and apply an even pressure. He's going to take another heat, and as he comes back to the bench, use another wooden tool. This is 10 sheets of newspaper folded up and saturated in water, and it works on the same principle as those newspaper pads, or those wooden blocks. A newspaper pad allows us to put our hand up as close as we can to that glass and shape it up. Works on the same principle of steam as the wooden blocks. Now he's going to allow that to cool off sufficiently so to support the weight and energy of another gather over the top without collapsing his bubble or stripping that off the end of the pipe. Just cleaning off this tool here so I can add some fresh beeswax. We add beeswax to certain tools to lubricate them against the glass. Make sure there's no dirt. That's why I cleaned it off. No dirt in the beeswax. It creates a grit against the glass. Now, He's allowed the glass to cool sufficiently so as he goes in and plunges into the 2200 degree glass, it doesn't transfer his heat, collapsing the bubble or even stripping it off into the pot. He can allow the excess glass to spool off. As he comes out, he has twice as much once again. Now, sitting on the sill of the furnace does heat up the pipe. These pipes are made of aircraft-grade stainless steel and they dissipate heat very rapidly. Most of the heat will stay down about 12 inches up off the glass in that discolored area while it's working. But we want to be able to get our hand down as close to that glass as possible for leverage. And we don't touch that discolored part there more than once anyways. You may touch it once, but you won't do it again. Now using his newspaper pad to distribute that clear glass over the top of his bubble. He's going to get that shaped up in an elongated shape. This time he'll be going into a larger optic mold to manipulate the texture on the surface. As he heats that up, pushing the heat all the way back down into the core, it'll be nice and loose as he comes out. Drop right into that optic mold, pressing down to the bottom. And it'll give it a little puff to push the glass out into those ridges. Straighten the back side. And from using that optic mold, he's cooled the glass down quite sufficiently. He's going to heat that back up, come back over to the bench, and start a very important part of his piece, which is the jack line. And the jack line is a compression line just off the end of the blowpipe. It's where we'll remove the piece once he has it finished blown out. And without the jack line, you basically have to break the piece off the end of the pipe. By creating this line, we'll then be able to snap this piece free once he has it blown out. He's going to push air down into the chamber. He's going to hold this jack line, cooling the glass in this area. Shielding a little radiant heat off of his hand here. Okay, so he's going to continue to blow this piece out. I'm going to start an addition for him here. A couple gathers of clear glass, which we'll use to create a foot for him. Left. This fresh gather over here. Drop that down. Snap off as much as it needs. Straight down. Away. There you go. Get as much as it needs there. Now we're going to use paddles. Once he brings that back up to temperature, we'll use paddles to fashion that into a nice foot. Now we're going to transfer that off of the blowpipe onto another pipe called a punty via a small dollop of glass. Bring this over, take control, placing this in the center of the bottom of this piece. Get that on a unified axis with the pipe. It's going to chill down along that jack line. A couple drips of water. And with a tap, away it will go. Transfer complete. Blowpipe to Bunny, my hands to Polly's. He's now going to focus the heat around the top end, which is the coldest part of that piece. But he has to make sure that he maintains a core temperature over the whole piece. If any part of that piece drops below 1,000 degrees while we're working, we run the risk of it exploding on the end of the pipe. We also have to make sure that that foot and connection point stay nice and hot, just to the point of barely moving. That is a temporary connection. If that gets too cool too soon, that's when we end up with what we refer to as the floor model. And we're not too fond of those these days. So it's going to heat up the top end. He'll then be able to come back to the bench. Use his tools here to open up the top. See that heated spot at the top. Use these jacks to open this up. They lightly touch on the lip just to square that up as he rolls back and forth, evenly lifting as he turns the pipe. Now, here's the part you've all been waiting for, the big O moment. Keep your eyes on the glass. This is where it all happens, and it happens quickly. It's going to take that piece, flash the whole thing, bringing it all back up to temperature. And he's going to overheat the top end. And then he'll be able to finalize his manipulations right there at the glory hole instead of coming back and using his tools. Keep your eyes on the glass. It's one shot for Polly. Once this piece outgrows the opening, it does not go back in. See, he increases his turns. As he holds that down, you can control the contour. Now, if we set that down in front of you, it would explode in about 5 minutes to 1,000 pieces. So we need to get that into a controlled atmosphere at 950 degrees, where it can go through a controlled cool down cycle. Yep. Paulie Mayville. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out with us here in the hot shop. We do invite you back behind the red door where you can see more of Paulie's work at room temperature, along with my work and some local regional artists. Also in the main gallery of the Morean is a new show going on. Check that out. If you're interested in any art classes, painting, photography, hot glass, ceramics, MoreanArtCenter.org. With that, have a great day. If you have any questions for Paulie or myself, feel free to ask. And thanks again for supporting the arts. The next one will start at the top of the hour if you missed the beginning. Thank you.